Ivan, for those who are just discovering the film Limbo, can you give a synopsis about what the movie's about?
Well, it's a crime thriller set in an outback town in Australia. It's about a white policeman who enters a small town to do a case review about what's a cold case review about a crime that happened 20 years earlier involving a young Indigenous girl. And so the story is about him trying to kind of work out what happened to this girl and at the same time overcome his own kind of issues and as he connects with this traumatized family. And yeah.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed watching this movie for a couple reasons that I'm looking forward to getting around to talking about. But I guess I want to start by admitting this is my introduction to your work. And so for people who are like me, maybe discovering Limbo, and this is like their first time experiencing your kind of filmmaking, can you like give an idea of what audiences can and should expect from movies and projects that you work on?
Well, I'm an Indigenous Australian, and so that has played a large role in the work I create, having my cultural kind of background. I grew up in a small town in Australia, and there are a lot of issues that have affected my family and affected the broader Indigenous people across Australia. And all of these issues eventually have found their way out within the films that I make. Um, so predominantly my work has been works that I guess are trying to show the world a bit more about the Indigenous experience in Australia.
That's awesome. I think it's important to bring these stories to light and to have, these kinds of movies really get these stories out there because I think that they can go unseen or overlooked too often. And so, I appreciate that that's an objective that you have and that it's such a something that's very near and dear to you and wanting to do filmmaking about. Um, Something that really struck me about the film was the visual style of it. And so I kind of want to ask about the development of this movie. I had wondered as I was watching, was this story that you had something that you came up with first and then found this really interesting black and white style to pair it with, or did you have the style in mind first and then came up with the story that you thought would go well with it?
Well, whenever I make a film, the location is the first thing that comes up, and then I write a story based on the location. So that's pretty much how this film was made. I think about 2014, I started. I went. I travelled to Cooper Pedy, which is a small town in Australia in the outback, where about 50% of the people live underground, and it's quite an extraordinary landscape with amazing characters there. So I used this place as kind of the setting for this story to come about, and the black and white element kind of came in as I was writing the script, and so like it kind of happens in that way. So the location, the story, and then the visual style as I'm writing the story. I have a really strong idea of how the film will have be shown with the camera and how it will be acted and the cast and so on. So all of that is kind of a part of my creation process during the writing process. So you just don't kind of finish the script and work out how I'm going to make it. That is inbuilt within the fabric of the script, and a lot of the scenes are actually written for specific locations as well. So it's that it gets integrated from a very early stage, and that's something that I always do. Yeah.
I love that. The motel in the rocks and living in the rock formations, I think was something that was just such a unique
Mm.
component to this movie. Like I guess I just never thought about making those like actual like living spaces.
Mm.
But there are certainly very interesting other sets. I mean, even when it comes to the telephone pole by the street, like just kind of this open kind of area. It's almost, what's the opposite of claustrophobia? There's this like interesting feeling that these settings give you, that it's very open, it's very stark. It's almost like time is paused in this movie, which kind of gives a lot of credence to the name Limbo.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all kind of on pause, and the black and white also helps that as well. I think there's a sense of these people are all living in some kind of memory, and this crime that happened 20 years ago kind of was the start of that kind of pause moment for this family. And but Travis, who's played by Simon Baker, his character has kind of been on pause for a while. And funnily enough, he actually has a tattoo on his arm which says pause on his arm, which
That's
actually
interesting detail there.
um, yeah, but yeah, it's an incredible place where I mean, there have been literally hundreds of movies shot at Cooper Pedy,
Mhm.
but they have all been shot pretty much above ground, and no one has actually really focused on the underground living culture of this town. And that's something that I really wanted to jump into with this story, and the design of this story is really highlight the hotels and the, living under houses, and I mean living underground within houses. It's just extraordinary.
Absolutely. So we're talking about the story, and we're discussing the importance of these Indigenous stories being told. Obviously, watching this movie reminded me and had for me top of mind about our own kind of reckoning that we're coming to here in North America with our own Indigenous populations. You've spoken a little bit about the significance of this story, like locally to you and Australia, but I'm interested with this film coming to Toronto, what your thoughts are about a story like this here in North America.
Well, a huge part of this film is the theme about missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I do know for a fact that this is a huge issue in Canada, but also within the United States as well, right across the country, in America. And so I do think people will make some kind of connection with this film, and and highlight this issue even a bit more.
Absolutely, and I hope so. It kind of, it makes me want. So the film has it premiered at Berlin, and I believe it's been released in Australia already. Correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So with it having the exposure that it's had so far, I was interested in knowing, is this movie accomplishing what you had set out for it to accomplish when you started making it?
Um, I think when the film was accepted within the competition of Berlin, I think there was a certain amount of satisfaction there. Um, uh, uh, so that kind of acknowledgement is something that does mean a lot as a filmmaker. But in Australia, you're always looking for more. You're always looking for more audience to be affected by your work. And yeah, I think I I don't think I would ever be happy with any kind of response. I just feel like you always got to kind of try and tap into a wider audience, or more people with the next film, and so forth. Never feel like, okay, you've done it now, sort of thing. I just feel
Right.
like it's always a work in progress when it comes to trying to get audiences to take notice of these issues is a hard thing in Australia, because a lot of the issues within my films are ignored by common normal Australians, non-Indigenous Australians, and by politicians. And so you're dealing with a subject that's ignored by the public. So you put that into your film's going to get ignored too if you're not careful, because this subject is not what people are interested in. So there's always that challenge there, and I think it's a challenge that all of us as Indigenous filmmakers in Australia are always having to deal with that.
Absolutely. But I'm happy to hear about the exposure that the film has gotten so far. And of course, with it coming to Toronto for TIFF. This is not the first film you've had at TIFF, is that correct? So
No, I've had two other films in TIFF, and I also had a film at the Indigenous Festival there as well in Toronto.
that's awesome. So you're pretty familiar with Toronto. Just kind of tell me what it means for you to have films screening at Toronto and of course here at TIFF.
I mean, yeah, Toronto is really important. It's the North American exposure point for your work, and you know everybody's there, and it's a chance for your film to have this ultimate North American platform. And the TIFF audiences are great. When you get into a Q&A session, there's always some amazing conversations to be had, and such Toronto people love their film. Just like the Berlin people do, I think.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming up to the end of our time. I just wanted to know if there's any other final thoughts that you'd like viewers or potential audiences to know.
Not really. I just hope that the audiences come out in Toronto and check out the film and get something out of it, really. Looking forward to being there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to being there too. I can't wait to hear about people's responses and congratulations on the film, its success, and of course having it screened at TIFF.